I've never been that candidate that the party has sought out and said, well, we want you to run for office. I was always the unlikely person to win in any of those races.
I'm surprised because you kind of fit the victim bingo.
Well, and that's what was surprised me,
right?
It never, ever occurred to me before until I won my primary in the race for Congress. And in Hawaii, it's a strong Democratic state. You win the Democratic primary, you have essentially won. And what you're talking about, happened right away. It was, maybe a week after the election, I got a call from Nancy Pelosi. I served in the National Guard at the time, and I was just wrapping up my National Guard duty. And I got a call, and she said, "This is Nancy Pelosi. Congratulations on your win. We're looking forward to having you in Congress. Would you like to come and speak at the Democratic National Convention on the main stage during prime time about veterans? We'll give you a couple of minutes to do it." And I was like, of course, I'd love to have that opportunity. And what happened starting at that point was very surreal. To have people on CNN and MSNBC around the convention saying, oh, so-and-so famous actor is going to play Tulsi Gabbard in the movie, or all this stuff. A few months later, Vogue called and we want to do a spread and a whole profile piece. And I was asked to be vice chair of the DNC within weeks of swearing into Congress. Something that I had no idea. My answer literally was, what is a vice chair of the DNC? And what do they do? What are you really asking?
I bet we still wonder.
I know.
Really.
And it's defined differently by different people depending on who's in charge. But all of these things, and there's so many, I was invited to the White House Correspondents' Dinner my first year in Congress. And I had people who'd been there for a decade. They're like, how come I've never been invited?
Yeah.
And you get to go. I'm just like,
perfect.
But that's what it was. That's exactly what it was, Marissa. And that became very clear as I was 31 years old, a quote unquote woman of color, female veteran, first of two female combat veterans ever elected to Congress. And all of these things very much fit the mold and the talking point of identity politics. I didn't fully see it at the time, but in hindsight, now I know it was all right, we're going to dangle all the trinkets in front of her and show her what this world could look like if she wants to be a part of the team.
Right. I call it the diamond cage.
Exactly. It didn't last long. It was that summer of August of 2013, my first year in Congress. I was a member of the Foreign Affairs Committee and the Homeland Security Committee at the time. I would later, that following year, move to the Armed Services Committee, but President Obama came and said he would come to Congress to ask for authorization to go to war in Syria. This decision that he said he would come to Congress for was exactly why I ran for Congress. I had come from 2 deployments to the Middle East that changed my life completely. I had deployed with the Hawaii Army National Guard, volunteered to deploy on both of those fronts, left my seat in the state legislature to do so. I served in a medical unit in Iraq during that first deployment, where every single day I was confronted with the high human cost of war, both in lives lost, but also in both visible and invisible wounds. I was confronted with the war profiteering that drives so many of these wars that are supported by the elite in both parties. I came back from that deployment completely changed and knowing that I could not go back to the life that I'd left behind. But those experiences are what drove me to run for Congress. So when President Obama made that announcement, I immediately started to dig into why. What does he want to do? Asking the basic questions that all politicians should ask when faced with the question of war or peace. What is our objective? What are you seeking to accomplish? How will you know when you've quote unquote won? What's the exit strategy? What will you do if they counterattack in some fashion? So these questions that are basic, common sense questions I asked of the administration. It was Secretary of State John Kerry at the time and others from the White House, the Department of Defense, the State Department, in open and closed hearings. And what surprised me most was that even in, again, this is 2013, we'd been at war in Iraq for quite some time. And there were a lot of people who I would have hoped had learned some lessons. They didn't have answers to those basic questions that I asked. Like, oh, we're going to go drop some bombs to send a message. I said, okay, well, how will they likely react to this military attack on their country? Oh, we don't think they will. Really? And so on and so forth. All of that work that I did caused me to conclude that going and launching another war that would be the first strike in a regime change war, which is what the Obama administration was pushing for, would ultimately not end well for us or the Syrian people, and had a strong likelihood we would end up in yet another quagmire, not only between the United States and Syria, but it would likely turn into a regional war. Came out and wrote an op-ed stating this, and immediately got a call from the White House within 24 hours saying, how dare you? Not, hey, tell us more about your position, or how can we provide you with, new information or arguments to address your valid concerns. You're a veteran. You've been deployed to the Middle East. You have a certain experience that maybe we can learn. Nothing like that. It was, how dare you go against your president? How dare you, as a freshman Democrat? You haven't even been here a minute, and you're challenging the leader of your party and one who was born in your home state in Hawaii. It was surprising to me that they didn't care at all about the seriousness of the objections that I raised, the concerns that I raised, and what was really at stake. All they cared about was, why are you not being a team player? How dare you betray your president? And in my heart, they were betraying my brothers and sisters in uniform. And it showed me that they really didn't care. After that, there was more opposition that came to what he was asking. So he never actually came, and it was never brought to a vote. And ultimately, he did not take that action. But that was the first sign to them and the Democratic leadership that I wasn't going to be the one to just smile for the cameras and vote according to what they send out in the email every morning, that I was going to question them and had no qualms about standing up against them when I knew that it was the right thing to do.